Hello there, Podcast Nation. Welcome to the SOS podcast. I'm Adam Thomas, here alongside with Steven Resnick on Monday, October 20th, 2014. Please join the conversation. Give us a follow over on Twitter at the SOS podcast. My personal handle is at AJThomas1 and Steven's is at Steven Resnick. So give us a follow, send us a tweet. Be happy to hear it. We got a real full slate. We're talking all four sports today. I know I'm pumped, Steve. I think you're pumped as well. You ready for the show? How was your weekend?
Definitely. It was pretty good. I actually went to the outside of Toronto in Buffalo to see the Sabres in action, to truly see if they're as bad as everyone says. And unfortunately, I'd say they're even worse. So it's nice getting to see that up front, close personal. Hopefully get to see Connor McDavid sooner rather than later there.
Yeah, and at the verge of giving the atrocious Buffalo Sabres too much radio time, we'll cut them off right there. So moving right along then, I think for me it was the NFL story with some of the ups and downs this week. To lead off the show, we'll go straight into the World Series preview. Of course, the series kicking off tomorrow. We promised that on our last episode, so here we are to deliver. Royals versus Giants. They'll open up the series in Kansas City, as mentioned, tomorrow night. For the Royals, this obviously is their first appearance in just under 30 years. Been a long, dry spell for them. The Giants, on the other hand, of course, two of the last four series have gone their way. Rather impressive run for the franchise right now. And both teams coming out of the wild card round, so an even more impressive on both their behalfs to get to where they are now. And the Royals, with an MLB record right now at 8 straight wins to open the playoffs, yet to face a loss, so we'll see how that treats them. Just your opening thoughts, Steve. Just generally, how do you like this series?
I think it's going to be a nice, even matchup. I think some people might have been tired of seeing the usual Yankees or Red Sox from the East and maybe the Cardinals from the West. Although having the Giants again, you do have one of those perennial NL teams that just seem to make it through every year or every other year. But I think you got some fresh blood on the Royals, and I think it's shaping up to be an exciting World Series.
Well said. I like the fact that Royals are fresh, as you mentioned, obviously not the Red Sox, Yankees, or even Tigers to a lesser extent, I guess. A new face there. Not a lot of experience on that roster, but they do have an aggressive feel to them. It seems like they're not worried to lose. They're not afraid to lose. And then, of course, you got the Giants taking the exact opposite path with just a veteran experienced leadership on that squad. They're deep in several of the key positions, and why don't we start chatting about some of that right now? So then Bumgarner Shields will obviously open up game one. No surprises there as the two aces take the mound for what will probably be a nice duel, although Shields has proven to be a little bit vulnerable through this playoff year. Looks like PV Ventura will take game two. Hudson will take the mound for the Giants in his first World Series appearance. Speculated to play probably against Vargas. Vogelsong expect to take game four against Guthrie for the Royals. And then we swing it back around game five and probably see Bumgarner Shields again, and who knows where it goes after. Your thoughts on the starting rotations? Do you give the nod to the Giants or the Royals?
I think you've got to lean towards the Giants side just for their experience, although Tim Hudson, as much experience as he has, like you said, he's never pitched in a World Series game before, so he doesn't have, on this stage, any same amount as the Royal pitchers, although that being said, I think you do, again, lean with the Giants. With Shields, he is called Big Game James, but just he hasn't really proven to be the shutdown, no hits allowed, no runners past second base type of guy you want in a shutdown type of game. And Ventura, he might be lights out, he might not be, you're not sure what you're getting. Same with Guthrie and Vargas, although so far they've held up to get to their stellar bullpen, but I think when it comes just based on the starters, I lean towards San Francisco.
Yes, and I am right there with you. I don't know if it's even maybe as close in reality as it might appear on paper. I don't think the Royals have a bad rotation, but outside of Big Game James, I think it starts to thin out quite a bit quicker. Just more with the consistency and uncertainty. As you mentioned, especially with Ventura, you don't know. You might get a shutout. You might get 6 runs in 5 innings pitched. Tough to say. They have held up through these playoffs so far. The Royals do have a good solid group of starters there, but I'm definitely on the Giants side of things. I love Baumgartner. He's probably, I think, borderline my favorite pitcher in the league right now. I just love what he does out there. And the other 3-4 guys they'll squeeze in there would be very, very effective against what's been a pretty powered up Royals lineup. And as well, I would like to mention Yusmeiro Petit again. He's the wild card. The Giants have found a lot of success with him in the playoffs. and he can come in a long man role or find a start if they really came up to it. So slight edge certainly to the Giants on the starting rotation. But moving from the rotation to the bullpen, the highlight of the Kansas City run here in the playoffs, their 3, 4 guys, depending if you count Finnegan in there, have been just lights out. It's all you can say about them. Steve, do you have anything other than the obvious to add to this comment on the bullpen of the Royals?
Not too much. I mean, not to take away from the Giants bullpen. I don't think Sergio Romo is a bad closer by any means. He's shown he can get it done on the big stage before, but if you've seen the Kansas City bullpen, I don't think you can bet against them compared to anyone else's bullpen, even maybe the All-Star Games bullpen at this point. It's just pretty much seventh inning starts, game's over if the Royals have the lead. So I think with this, you definitely lean towards Kansas City's bullpen.
Yes, no argument from me at all. Holland, almost a career year, came up save short of his own personal record this season. Davis, Herrera have been just brilliant in the lead up to him. I think if you see this bullpen in the sixth inning start to show up and you don't already have a lead as the Giants, you're going to feel a lot like the Baltimore Orioles did, and it's not good, and it doesn't end well for you. So, with that note, maybe we'll swing on to the Giants hitting rotation. Are they going to be able to generate some early runs off of this Royals team to get themselves in a position to win? They finished off the series against the Cardinals with a little bit of a power showing that certainly clinched it for them. Are we going to be able to see that enough this series to make the difference in those early innings, or is it going to be lights out bullpen time for the Royals?
I think you're going to see close games all the way through, so I don't think it'll be safe to expect any big outbursts by either team in any inning, really. But with the Giants, I mean, you've got some clutch performers. You've got Pence, Posey, Sandoval, guys who, not just this playoff, but seemingly every postseason, just come up clutch, especially when the game is on the line. Even this postseason, you got Brandon Crawford, Travis Ishikawa, even with the NLCS walk-off home run, just coming up when it's needed. And not to take away from the Royals' speed, you got Escobar at the top, even Lorenzo Cain with his power. Hosmer even has some good speed to him. But just I think when you compare the two, when it's going to be close games, I think the Giants just have that edge with their clutchness, and especially with guys like Pence and Posey.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be a question. I think the veteran presence of the Giants is going to show up probably in the hitting lineup. I think more than anywhere. They do have the clutch performers. I mean, Buster Posey, perennial All-Star candidate. Sandoval has obviously done before. Hunter Pence, I think, one of the best gamers in the league right now. The guy just shows up, has productive innings for the Giants. The key for Kansas City is probably going to be to exploit the run game and some of the speed they were able to generate through the season, leading the league in stolen bases. It's no accident they've found a way to generate runs, and at times it's coming with the long ball, which is an interesting twist for them. But I will lean slightly towards the Giants' experience here to really shine through. Particularly those three big names in Posey, Sandoval, and Pence to really make a difference this series. All right, just quickly, Steve, to wrap things up here on the World Series 2014, your official pick to be this year's champion.
I think I said last week that I learned my lesson not to pick against the Royals, but I've decided in more thinking that I haven't yet, and I'm going to pick the Giants in 5. I think the first 2 games you'll see a split, and once it goes back to San Francisco, it's going to be lights out for Kansas City.
5 games, wow, that's a quick one. I'm going to stick with the Royals. I've had them since day one. In all truth and honesty, I was thinking this over a little bit, and I probably would switch over to the Giants if I could. I think the experience factor is going to be worth something. And the other thing that sticks out in my mind is, unfortunately for the Royals, or fortunately, I suppose, they've yet to lose a game in these playoffs. I think they're going to lose at least one in this series against the Giants. And my question is, what happens then? Are they able to bounce back? Can they deal with some of that adversity? They haven't proven it yet. Not all teams can handle it, so we'll see how it goes. But I will stick with the Royals. So give me the Royals in 6. Steve, you've got the Giants in 5. Good luck to you. We'll see who's closer on this call. With that wrapped up for the World Series, we'll stay tuned and pay close attention to that one. We're going to spend a little bit of time right now catching up on the NFL weekend. A whole pile of craziness, in my personal opinion. Just ups and downs all over the scoreboard, depending where you were looking, surprises. But just quickly off the top, I want to congratulate Peyton Manning on becoming the all-time passing touchdown leader, now sitting at 510. Need to see for myself. Been a fan of Peyton's, pardon me, for quite some time. Back in '03, they played the Bucks on Monday Night Football. The Bucks got out to a huge lead, and Peyton Manning turned things around rather quickly towards the end of the fourth quarter there to end up winning that game. One of the greatest comebacks in NFL history. So Peyton fan here for a long time. Steve, any notes on Peyton you'd like to add?
I think you've got to respect his talent, especially when after coming back from such a serious injury at I think it was age 36 to come back and be arguably even better than the MVP caliber player he was before is just really shows how special a talent he really is.
Absolutely, Steve. So moving on, Cleveland Browns. Just a mere 3-4 days ago on this very show, Steve and I were talking about a 6-2 Cleveland Browns team. Of course, in perfect fashion, they found a way to lose 24-6 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Steve, the Browns, are you changing your thoughts on them with that performance?
I don't think you can get too crazy from a one loss, even if it was to Jacksonville. And while that being said, I don't think you're going to see a lot of action on the Browns bandwagon into this upcoming week. But I still think they're going to be okay. Their division, especially with the Bengals not looking so strong of late and the Steelers being what they are, doesn't look like it's going to be too difficult this year. I still like their strength of schedule. I still have faith in Brian Hoyer, so I'm not disowning the Browns just yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You don't rewrite the whole script just for one game. But that being said, one of the points I alluded to last week was the complete disappearance of Johnny Manziel from the quarterback picture in Cleveland. I'll note one loss and one very bad performance by Brian Hoyer, and I've been able to find all sorts of news fodder about the aforementioned Manziel. So shows you how quickly things can change, despite a very strong start to the season for Hoyer. I think his job's safe for the meantime, but those rumors are starting to swirl up again. And quickly over to Indianapolis and Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, I think, is making a case very early on in the season to be an MVP caliber player. He's certainly an elite player at this point. Can this team be stopped? We chatted about a few teams last week and the weeks before who look like contenders, but how legit do the Colts look?
Yeah, after opening with losses to the Broncos and the Eagles, who are two very good teams in their own right, they've been undefeated, 5 straight wins, and not just the offense, but the defense really clicking as well. And especially the way they start games, just putting teams out of reach almost by not even halftime. By middle of the second quarter, they're up 17-0, 24-0. It's just been impressive all around.
When you can make Trent Richardson relevant in the NFL again, despite his clear lack of physical ability at this point, you've got a good football team. So watch out for those Colts. They're going far this year. How far, we will find out. But let's spend a few minutes talking about the hometown Bills. Go Bills go! Another big win this Sunday. Sammy Watkins showing he was worth the trade up in the draft and then some, possibly cashing in on 2 touchdowns. Of course, none more critical than the game winner with 1 second left on the clock. Sammy Watkins has been awesome. Kyle Orton seems to be playing the part, doing well. They shook off a tough loss there against New England to come back and squeak one out. Thoughts here on the Bills, Steve?
Not to be a buzzkill, but I think you might want to temper the enthusiasm just a little bit.
Temper the enthusiasm.
A lot of the wins coming in last-second fashion, especially against a not-so-great Minnesota team, I think, to put it lightly. They've just lost their top 2 running backs for an extended period of time, it looks like, with C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson. So it's really going to depend on Kyle Orton now, and you've got to wonder, it's 4-3. With the Patriots at the top of the division, what's it going to take for them to really make a run to the playoffs?
Yeah, and I do appreciate your realistic view of things, Steve. Fred Jackson, C.J. Spiller, both go down in the same game is not good news for a Bills team that relies heavily on their run game. The Devil's Advocate might say that Kyle Orton led a heck of a game-winning drive despite that lack of run game and support, but I don't think that's a recipe for success in the long run. This to be said, they're sitting at 4-3, second in the division. 3 of those wins, as you alluded to, came in very questionable fashion. But then again, they weren't so far off against the Texans. So maybe this is even a 5-2 team with bounces going again a little bit further in their way. That being said, it could probably be a 2-5 team as well. So maybe we're not quite sure what we got with the Bills just yet. But hey, 4-3, let's go Bills, go! Moving along to an AFC East rival in the Miami Dolphins. They are now sitting in 3rd place with a big win this weekend as well. They're at 3-3, so a game behind the Bills and two behind the division-leading Patriots. What do you think here about the Dolphins? They seem to be playing pretty productive football.
Yeah, every time people start to think like, oh, maybe Ryan Tannehill isn't the guy, he comes up with a performance like that where he just looks like a total star, throwing the ball wherever he wants and even running down the field, taking tacklers with him and just torching the defense of the Bears, which, while not the defense it used to be, is still one of the, I'd say, above average in the NFL. And especially with Lamar Miller in the backfield, too, I think you've got a pretty good offense there. And I don't think they're a team that you want to sleep on. And they've already beat the Patriots already, so they've got that going for them within the division.
Yeah, and those division wins are probably going to be key, obviously, down the stretch. Seems to be the case every year. Not so often in the East, but this year might be a little bit different. The Dolphins, they do make an interesting case. It's a tough Chicago team they played there. Not necessarily a defensive force, but a lot of offensive talent. They managed to keep them more or less off the scoreboard, generating a few turnovers off Cutler, who had really his first bad game of the season. So I do like what they're doing down there in Miami, but I have to ask the question, looking at things, again, we're still fairly early in the season, quite haven't hit the midpoint yet, but is Miami doomed to fail just based on the depth of the AFC? The four division leaders right now all sit at 5 wins. San Diego as well at 5 wins. And then actually that leaves the Buffalo Bills as your sixth playoff team with 4 wins. So already the Dolphins a game out. Can they figure it out with the Bengals, Browns, Steelers maybe even hanging around? Are they better than those teams?
I think you got to give them a shot. They've got just as good a quarterback as any of those teams, which is arguably your biggest game breaker. So I think it'd be wrong to count them out, and especially if they've got the Bills and the Jets on their schedule. Again, no offense. I think you've got to count that they're going to get a few more wins, especially divisional wins in there, which will come up huge.
I think they might find themselves on the outside looking in. I think there's just too much of a backlog there. I mean, I don't think you can discount them, but those 5-6 teams I named off there, I think there's some good competition coming out of that NFC North. Might be enough to bounce the Dolphins yet again. And let's switch things over to the NFC for a moment. New Orleans, that was the pick for myself in terms of the shocker of the week. Another heartbreaking loss for them. They sit 2-4 on the year, so all is not lost. It's a very poor division as it stands right now, with Carolina leading at 3-3-1. Of course, that one tie against the Bengals. Interesting to note, New Orleans, aside from getting squashed by Dallas in that game, have a combined point differential of just -6 in the other 3 losses. So they're really are truly getting beat by the smallest of margins. Is this bad luck, Steve, or is this team just not as good as we expected them to be coming into the season, or their past performance may have indicated?
I think you've got to be a little bit concerned with the way they've started. I don't think anyone wanted to see them start 2-4 nor expected it to actually come to fruition. Especially the way it happened last game with Drew Brees' interception late in the game, deep in his own territory. If the Saints lose, I think you generally expected it's not going to be as a result of a Drew Brees turnover or the way he plays. But seeing that and the way they're being unable to pull out these close games, as you mentioned, I think there's got to be a little cause for concern there.
Yeah, and the follow-up question I'll go with here is, given down the general watered-down nature of that division and lack of competition overall that they experienced this year, Sean Payton, Drew Brees, they have probably 2 of the longest leashes in football. I doubt anybody's calling for their heads anytime soon. If they don't win this division, does one of those 2 guys find themselves gone next year, or do they return, due to past success and reputation?
I think you'd see them return for at least one more year, even if they fail to make the playoffs this year. Especially you saw the team looked without Peyton after the whole Bounty Gate scandal. I think he's definitely proven his worth, at least to this organization, in terms of the on-field product and the effect he has on it. And I think you'd be silly to get rid of Drew Brees, especially if you have no replacement that can even tangibly come close to what he produces for your offense.
Very, very fair response. I would guess you're correct. I think Sean Payton's earned himself a little bit of leeway, and actually that year suspension can only add to his case. New Orleans looked relatively terrible. I mean, potentially give or take how they do this season. I'm just a little bit concerned about Breeze. I don't think he's by any stretch done it over with yet, but that offense just doesn't seem to be firing quite the same. I don't know if it's Marcus Colston sort of taking a step or 2 back this year. Would like to see the offense do a little bit more, especially at home. So we'll see how they do, but I do think they both return as well. And the last team we'll touch on here before we change gears, Seattle Seahawks. Shocking loss to the St. Louis Rams. Seattle 3-3, third place in the division. Are they able to make a comeback here? Is there anything they can do to find a way to fix this season, or are they very quickly running into hard times?
I don't think you should be too concerned. I think they're still an elite team. Maybe not at the same elite level you saw them last year, but I think they're still a very good team. Obviously, you've got to be a bit concerned. The first back-to-back losses in 2 years, you have to wonder, why is this happening? And again, the loss of Percy Harvin, who knows if that was a little inner turmoil within the team this week. It definitely dominated the headlines a little bit, but they've got a tough schedule. They got a tough division, but I still wouldn't count them out. That defense is still very good. The Rams had some pretty impressive trick plays on them and showed a lot of guts at some of their fourth down calls, so I wouldn't be disowning, again, the Seahawks just yet.
Yeah, I will not argue there. St. Louis probably did not win in typical fashion by any stretch. Jeff Fisher, their head coach, always known as a gambler. I used to love watching him coach out in Tennessee. He'd have an onside kickoff or two almost every game just for no apparent reason whatsoever. Beauty coach, and he got them the win this week. As for Seattle, I think I'm slightly less optimistic than you are. I'm not going to say they're done right this moment, but you have a San Francisco team that's playing mediocre football as well. If they find a way to turn it on, they've been a perennial contender for the last few seasons. They could cause some real trouble. Arizona, despite the slew of injuries on their defensive side of the ball, they do have Carson Palmer back in the lineup. They're playing good football. They're out to a quick lead and a big lead at that, with a few division wins as well. I don't know if the Seahawks are going to be able to catch Arizona. Arizona was a 10-6 football team last year in a very tough division. Arizona might find a way to hold on to this one, in which case Seahawks have to find a way in with one of the two wild cards. And you've got a tough NFC North. You've got a tough NFC East. It's no lock. I won't say they're out, but I won't say they're in either. And that'll wrap us up for our discussion on the NFL for today. So a big weekend there. We look forward to another weekend as we head into Week 8, get to the midpoint of the season. But over to the NHL here quickly. We'll have a little Leafs and Sens chat, get caught up. Of course, our last episode was only a few days ago, so there's only been a couple games for either team that have taken place. But we'll go through things quickly. The Leafs currently right now, they're 2-3-1, 5 points out of the division lead in the Atlantic, trailing the Canadiens as well as a couple other teams there. A few tough losses to Detroit Friday and Saturday, and a back-to-back home and home. Friday a little bit worse with a 4-1 loss to the Wings, and then the 1-0 loss in overtime on Saturday. Steve, how'd you like those games against Detroit?
Yeah, I don't think anyone was too impressed with Friday's game. Just a thorough beatdown of the Leafs in almost every facet. Reimer wasn't terrible, but he didn't make the saves when they needed him in that game. The defense wasn't great. The offense wasn't producing much. And then you had Brandon Kozun get hurt on top of that. So I think all in all, just a forgetful performance. And then on Saturday, while definitely much improved, Bernier played great. Still a lot of defensive lapses. Bernier bailed them out, and then unfortunately 10 seconds left in overtime, and Detroit gets the winning goal on a bit of a lazy play by Cody Franzen and some lackluster positioning from Bernier, who I don't think you can blame him in the whole grand scheme of that game. But all in all, 1 point out of back-to-back games against a divisional opponent, definitely not what you're looking for.
Yeah, and the team just reminds me a lot of last year's edition in many ways. Those defensive challenges they're having. Again, asking Bernier to bail you out, and he's only going to be able to take it so far in the end, especially when you can't find a goal on the night. But definitely some question marks there. Tough loss, too, with Kozun. I know he was one of the bigger and brighter, better stories of certainly the preseason and young season to this point. Then again, maybe there's not room on the blue line for him anyway, as Stuart Percy took a scratch this weekend, and maybe we'll take a second to chat about Mr. Percy. He was in there in the lineup on Friday night, had a -1 on the evening in the 4-1 loss, then found himself in the press box on Saturday. Steve, you're a fan of Percy. Any ideas what's happening there?
Yeah, I think you just got to wonder why scratch Percy, of all players to scratch. I mean, it seems the Leafs are just afraid of having all their younger talent and Gardner, Riley, and Percy all in the lineup at once. If you look at the stats, I mean, it shows, especially, there's not a lot of discrepancy between most of the guys, but you've got Robida really showing that he's struggling in his own end, and just with this Corsi 4, it's just not looking great right now. And I think with Percy there, he's a calming influence, which isn't to take away from Robida's experience and having been there and been in those situations. But I think right now, if you're benching anyone, it's got to be him, and it definitely shouldn't be Percy, who you've got him up here. You've got clearly shown that you don't want him with or not necessarily you don't want him with the Marlies, but you want him with the big club and getting those minutes. You may as well give him to him. He's not going to learn anything by being in the press box.
Yeah, and one of the knocks I've heard about Carlisle here and there along the way over the years is that he doesn't seem to much like working with the rookies and the younger players. I wonder if that's starting to show here. It seems as though they've never really had the combination of Franzen, Gardner, Riley, a Percy or a Cozen sort of all on the ice in one game. I mean, that is a lot of youth and fairness, whether Carlisle's opposed to that or not. But I wonder if that tendency on his behalf is going to really limit the upside of a few of these young defenders at any given time. It seems like at least one or two of them will be in the press box when there might be a good case made for them to be on the ice. But moving on from Stuart Percy and his press box issues, one name, David Clarkson, that has not been mentioned heading up to the press box this season. He's got a couple points now in 6 games, a few face-off wins in there. He's laying the body. No longer the scapegoat, David Clarkson. Has he finally earned a little bit of trust in Toronto and a little bit of love from the fan base?
Well, I think there was only room to go up after just an unfathomably bad first year of his big contract with the Leafs, and I think it's going to be hard for him to ever live up to that $5+ million a year salary. But for what situation the Leafs have him in right now, I think playing with Komarov and Santorelli, that's arguably been the Leafs' best line, most consistent line this whole year. They've shown good speed. They've shown they're going to forecheck and play the body down there, and they're producing some chances. And I think you can't ask for him to do more than what you've got in the situation you've got currently got him in. You'd obviously like him to be producing a bit more with the money you're paying him and the amount he's taking up in his salary cap world. But for what he's doing right now, I don't think you can be too upset.
Other than filling the net against the Rangers, they haven't been able to find more than a couple goals a night. And of course, to that end, generally getting outscored. A couple tough games coming up. We'll preview them in just a second. But over to the Senators, who had a game since we last taped against Columbus Blue Jackets, taking the win there. They're getting scoring continued from all different sources. In this case, it was Hoffman finding a goal and an assist in the game, taking the first star. All that with 12 minutes of ice time, I might point out. So his 2 points, the first star, in 12 minutes of ice. How good's Hoffman, and can he really make this stick and carry through?
Yeah, I think you really got to be impressed with what he's producing in the limited amount of time he's seeing. He showed last year that he was able to think at this level, skate at this level more than arguably most of the players in this league, and he's shown that unlike Darren Hell maybe for the Red Wings, he's able to control the puck at that speed, which is really crucial to being successful at that. And I think you saw the goal he scored, you saw the chances he's unable to convert in that Columbus game, and you got to think maybe it's time to give him more of a shot, especially on some of the special teams units with his speed on the power play and the penalty kill.
Yep, and I'll probably sound like a broken record here if Stone and Hoffman keep playing this well as the season goes. Throw Lazar's name in there as well. I think these guys need the ice time. Get them on there. Find a way, whether it's Milan Mahalik or somebody else, just find a way. Get them some ice. As well, Robin Leonard, he gets the second star in the game against Columbus, finds another win. He's one I'm waiting to get a little more ice time as well, but I mean, you can't argue with Anderson at the moment. He's playing great hockey. But over to the guy who does make the decisions, McLean behind the bench. May have been somewhat on the hot seat coming into the season. Disappointing year last year overall for the team following the success they had 2 years ago. Has McLean bought himself a little bit of time here with the start? He seems to have the team settled, seems to have the goaltending situation figured out. What's your thoughts on McLean?
Yeah, I definitely think he's a bit more comfortable now, so maybe his doppelganger can get some more tickets in there before he doesn't get the opportunity to show his face-off anymore. But I think, especially with Carlisle's situation in Toronto, I think he's proven to be a much more stable coach in a much more stable environment he's created for the Sens, especially after a summer with lots of uncertainness. So I think he's, like you said, he's got the goalie situation. I don't know if you want to call it a platoon, but he's got it moving well. The offense is producing enough to get them the wins. They've got a good record, I think, right now. He's got to be comfortable, and it seems like he's pushing the right buttons.
Yeah, he's doing a fine start behind the bench to start this season. I don't know if it was necessarily fair to give him the criticism he received last year. I didn't think the team executed particularly well. There was what seemed to be a lot of gaps at times on the ice. That being said, he did take a lot of the flack for it, so it's nice to see him getting some support to start the year off this year and give him a little bit more of a leash to work with. Happy to see that and a good start for the boys. But speaking of our starts and where we go from here, both Toronto and Ottawa have interesting schedules coming up here. We'll lead off with Toronto. They take on the Islanders tomorrow night. Stiff competition, a stiff opponent there. They're playing in New York, so the Islanders will get the line change and so forth in their favor. Obviously, playing some great hockey. Can see a tough game there for the Leafs, and then they play the next night, Wednesday night, in Ottawa. So back to back, leading into a game against the Sens, and then wrapping up the week Saturday night against Boston. I don't think it would be crazy, especially with the back-to-back in there against Ottawa, to see them go 0-3 over this next stretch. Might give them some trouble. What do you see there, Steve?
I don't think it would be surprising, but I definitely think if it does happen, you're going to see some change happen, especially after I think that would make a 5-game winless streak, and I don't think anyone would be happy in this market if they saw that. The Isles, like you're saying, they're proving to be a tough test to any opponent. They're 4-1. They're off to a great start. Tavares looking to be a dominant player again. The Sens, they've always given the Leafs trouble in the regular season, so you never know how that's going to turn out. You're just most likely, I think, if you're most looking forward to, if you're the Leafs, to see if Bernier can come off his good performance on the weekend and see if he can keep that going. And we'll see if he gets back-to-back starts. Maybe you want to rest him for the Boston game, but I think it'll be interesting to see. And all said and done, I think the Leafs are going to get at least 2 points out of the 6 available this week.
I don't know if the Leafs are in great shape there, especially with the back-to-back. I think Ottawa's schedule looks a little bit better. They take on a tired Leafs team Wednesday night at home, followed by the Devils on Saturday, so they'll be well rested for those 2 games. Unfortunately, their following game after New Jersey on Saturday night is in Chicago, so they'll travel on a short day there. I would guess probably take the loss to a tough Western Conference opponent on short rest. Then after that, it's at Columbus, and then returning to Ottawa to face those Blackhawks again. I'll be optimistic here and say they can find a win against the Leafs and Devils. Probably take the loss to Chicago, and then maybe split the Columbus and Chicago on the back half of that for a few wins out of that stretch. Your thoughts there, Steve?
I definitely don't see them going winless in that stretch, but it should be a good test, especially with Chicago. And New Jersey has proven to be off to a very good start. And while Corey Schneider might not be playing as good as he wants to, I think the offense is really producing more than anyone expected, especially Mike Camilleri fitting in well there. Columbus as well, Bobrovsky playing well, Johansson showing that doesn't need training camp to get into midseason form. Again, I think against the Leafs, like you said, they'll be well rested, so I like while I may not end in 60 minutes, I do like the Sens' chances in that game, and overall, if I had to pick how many points I get out of the 10 in those 5 games, I'd like to say 6.
All right, not too bad. So we'll see how Leafs and Sens make out over the next 5-6 days. Chat about them again next week. So, Steve, this appears to be our longest podcast we will have taped to date. We're going to try and get in the Toronto Raptors season preview here, given that they're kicking off this week coming as well. So we want to get that in. And, of course, we always give the fans what they want. So we're going to go overtime here. We're going to do this preview. And, Steve, let's talk Raptors. Of course, last year they had a terrific season. The 48 wins, a franchise record. They won the division. Don't think I need to remind anybody north of the border, crushing Game 7 loss to the Brooklyn Nets. That series had everything. It was an amazing series. The Raptors they came as close as you could to sneaking it out as you really can without doing so. They're 5-1 in this preseason, so things are looking up for whatever that's worth. Steve, your opening thoughts on the Toronto Raptors 2014-15 season?
Yeah, I think you got to be at least optimistic heading into the season, more so than any other Toronto sports team, at least. They had a great year last year, like you said, coming off franchise record, best regular season record. I didn't get as far as I wanted to in the playoffs, but definitely showed some promise in sticking with the Nets, which were a veteran, experienced playoff team, which arguably in the NBA means more than the other 4 sports, or the other 3 big sports. I think with the returning core, you've got Lowry coming back. He's going to be comfortable. You got DeRozan staying there, who after summer with the U.S. basketball team is only going to be even better. You got them. Your starting 5 back. You've got the chemistry there. I think you're got to be really optimistic if you're a Raptors fan right now.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe we'll speak a little bit here about some of the off season for the Raptors, and I think Masai Ujiri, his biggest move was a non-move in the sense of bringing back that starting five, bringing back head coach Casey, bringing back global ambassador Drake. He's got the team there. He made a few off-season moves to add a little bit of depth off the bench, bringing in Lou Williams, James Johnson, but ultimately he signed the guys he needed to. He kept Patterson in the lineup, Lowry the fan favorite, and running the offense. Great move to keep him around, and I think really the continuity, the chemistry amongst this group is going to be the difference here. And more important, especially for the younger guys, Terrence Ross, Valanciunas, this will be their third year in what essentially amounts to the same system, same organizational structure, same coaching staff. They've only got upwards to go. So why don't we have a look at the roster a little more in depth? The big man in the center, Jonas Valanciunas, again, his numbers increased in areas where you'd like them to last year, particularly in points per game and rebounding. Had some nice growth there. Seems to be reporting to camp and the start of the season here a little bulkier, a little heavier, which you probably like out of your big man. Are you a fan of Valanciunas, Steve?
Definitely. I think if you're the Raptors, you do want to see him take another step forward, though, this coming year. He's a very high draft pick, got a lot of potential, and I think in the East, with not a lot of big superstar centers there, he can really impose his will on a lot of teams and really make a difference for the Raptors going forward. And I think also having a guy like Amir Johnson there beside him in the front court definitely helps, where he doesn't have to bang and grab all the rebounds all the time when you've got a sidekick there to help you out like that.
Yeah, between Valanciunas, Johnson, Patterson coming off the bench, you're going to lock down 15, 20 rebounds a game through those guys at least, if not more on a good game. And you get some solid defensive play. I think Amir Johnson, just playing some effective fundamental basketball really helps the team just to execute and, again, take a little bit off of the shoulders of Valanciunas. Looking at the forwards, they bring back, again, the aforementioned Amir Johnson as well as Terrence Ross. Patrick Patterson will come off the bench. James Johnson, who they brought in in the offseason to provide a little defensive punch as well. I think this group certainly up front is sufficient and effective. I think Terrence Ross, one of the best young talents in the league. No problem seeing these guys come back on the court this season. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, again, the chemistry you've got the same 3, 4, 5 guys there that with Ross, Johnson, and JV, they know the system. You're expecting them hopefully take another step forward. I don't know if they're expecting Terrence to improve as much as maybe Jonas Valanciunas, but I still think they'd like to see him at least be a bit more consistent. Some games, he's dropping on a 50-point pace like that one against the Clippers, or maybe high 20s for some of his other great games. And other games, you barely see him. He plays 5 minutes and then you don't recognize him or you don't notice him for the rest of the game. That being said, though, I think James Johnson is definitely going to be a big addition. He's played here before. He's familiar with the city, and he just adds an improved defensive presence and another big body to take minutes off JV and Amir. And if there's foul trouble, you've got another guy that's not Chuck Hayes' height, that can go in there and guard some of the bigger guys.
That's it. And I think some of that consistency for Terrence Ross you mentioned might still be a reflection of his age. Still a young guy. He's definitely got a little bit of growing to do, a little bit of learning. And hopefully we see some of that again here in his third season in Toronto and can really expand on what he's been able to do here already. I think it's a good little rotation coming off the bench. I think Toronto's starting five proved last year they can hang in there. I think the difference for this team and probably a good majority of the teams in the league is what kind of contribution you get off the bench. And I think you get some good defense there. You maybe get a little bit of scoring punch with Patterson. He showed some prowess hitting from the three-point arc and beyond last year. So if you can keep that rolling through, I think the upfront group for the Raptors, certainly in the East anyway, is definitely capable of delivering another playoff berth. Looking at their backcourt, DeMar DeRozan made the All-Star team last year. Great nod there for the fans of Toronto. He's a dynamite player. Kyle Lowry proved to be a huge asset to the team. Certainly a fan favorite as well. Got the contract in the summer to bring him back. He seemed pumped about it. The team seemed pumped about it. I think the fans are pumped. Makes for a pretty decent backcourt, and again, a returning unit. Your thoughts on DeRozan and Kyle Lowry?
Yeah, I think the Raptors have arguably one of the best backcourts in the entire Eastern Conference. Lowry and DeRozan really showed last year that they can take the Raptors to pretty much they can take control of the game when they want to. And aside from one dribble off a foot against the Brooklyn Nets, they were that close to going to the second round. I think Rivas Vasquez coming back is a huge thing for the Raptors. Another guy you can handle the ball and take some of the tougher minutes off Lowry while Lowry still is able to play and score maybe. And again, even with Lou Williams bringing him in, just another capable guy off the bench who can handle the ball and again give some rest to Lowry and maybe not have him so worn out by the end of the regular season, start of the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's again for me. I think as awesome as DeRozan and Lowry are, I think they really Williams and Vasquez giving that extra punch off the bench, adding those extra points. If you look up and down this roster, you'd probably peg Valanciunas and Johnson for 10 odd points a night, give or take. So you pair them up for about 20 points. You take maybe a 20 on an average night from Ross, 20 from DeRozan. So you're sitting at 60 points there. Lowry contributes maybe 12, 15 himself. So before you know it, you're at a 70, 80 point game and just looking for those extra 20 points off the bench to close out the win for the night to get to your 100 or so points, which is usually pretty good for a win in the NBA. And I think Toronto's got that maybe even more so than last year, and they found 48 wins last year. So having a look at all that, Steve, your thoughts about a bit of a prediction this year in terms of their finish in the Eastern Conference?
I think you're actually going to see them improve and set a new franchise record. I think they're going to break that 50-win mark. I see them getting around 52 wins. The division it's not good at all. The Sixers are really bad. The Celtics are only going to get worse once Rondo's out of there. The Knicks, you never know. The Nets, they lost Pierce, who, while he was old, he was still an integral part of that team. And you got KG and Deron Williams that are only getting older and more injury prone. You got the Bulls, you never know with Derrick Rose how he's going to fit in. You got the Heat losing LeBron. The Cavaliers, maybe you're able to pencil in above them. But again, you got the Pacers losing Paul George and Lance Stevenson. I really think the Raptors have a good chance to get one of those top couple seeds in the East this year and break that 50-win mark.
Yeah, I won't be as bold as to say they set the new franchise record with wins. But that being said, the pathway is definitely there for success this year. I think the issue in the conference is just uncertainty all around. I mean, I think the Cavs, they're going to certainly be a step better with LeBron. It goes without saying. I can see the Bulls and Wizards maybe being a little more prepared. So you got three teams there that'll probably be playoff contenders. The Heat will fall a little, maybe for your fourth team. I think Indiana still competes maybe as a fifth team. Say Brooklyn as your sixth team. And then I don't know after that it gets real thin. So certainly the Raptors should make the playoffs. And I would think they will be in the top four. But in saying that, I will definitely call them for a playoff appearance and hopefully home court advantage to go along with it. All right, and I think that takes us to the end of our Raptors recap. But Steve, before we take off here, any closing thoughts for you today?
Not too much. Just looking forward to the sports week ahead. We're getting that much closer to having all four major sports being in action at once, if possible, if you can get the World Series to go long enough. So hopefully we can get to see all that, and I can waste a few days away that way.
It is truly a special time of year for the sporting fans. So thank you for everybody joining us on this edition of the SOS podcast. Big game, Sens and Leafs this week. Go Sens, go. Let's get a big win, and we'll see you all next week.